But then, and to be contrarian for this, often we're seeing the suggestions that the economy is about to collapse, Russia's about to disintegrate, but we're 3 years in and the sanctions are still not having the intended effects, or they're finally having intended effects. So to be devil's advocate, Jason, why hasn't Russia's economy collapsed yet if it is still so bad?
I don't know why. I mean, everyone always asks that, but the reality is, if you go to a doctor and they tell you you have stage 4 cancer and you're going to die, they're not giving you the date. They're telling you you're terminal. And the patient in this case is terminal. It will die. It's not, I don't know what date it's going to happen, but I can guarantee you it will. It's not sustainable as it is. If you go and they do a blood test and they tell you you're terminal and you have stage 4, it's probably true. I don't think they're just kidding. And when you look at the economic indicators from Russia, it's the same. It's not going to survive. And I have yet to talk to any economist who's had a different opinion looking at the numbers, who actually studies Russia, who like specifically works on Russia and isn't just giving their off the cuff viewpoint. I've not met one yet who says, no, it's probably going to work out okay. Still haven't met one.
I think it's a good analogy. I haven't heard someone put it quite as stark as that, but I guess it's, as I've spoken to various other economists or people who cover Russia like you, one person described it as a slow-moving car crash, sort of that it is gradually unraveling, but it's very difficult to put an end point on it, and that's what so many people want to see. But the other issue is obviously the sustainability for Ukraine. You talked about the different components that are needed in warfare, and obviously manpower is something that Russia likes to claim, at least, that it has. You know, demographically speaking, Ukraine has a lower fertility rate than Russia does, aside from the war. So how can we ensure that Ukraine is going to be sustainable in its defense if the Europeans don't get their act together, if Trump suddenly decides one day he's changed his mind again, right?
I don't think the fertility rate, I mean, we'd have to wait another 25 years from the reach draft age in Ukraine, so I'm not worried about the fertility rate right now. But as far as the demographics of the population, yeah, Ukraine has significant demographic problems. Different than Russia's, they have very different demographic problems, so they both have very significant problems. Russia's problems, though, are multifold. I mean, their problems are probably actually worse just because of the way that it's, if you look at the society, it should be a pyramid is what you're aiming for. So you have a tax base that's able to support the people at the top, like on pensions. As an example, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but that's just like explaining it, right? Because there's the number of people who are using the services and are paying for them is bigger than those who are just receiving, including the roads or whatever else it is. But in this case, it's in Russia, the demographics have a lot of problems. There's a lot of setbacks. Ukraine's also had massive problems with the fact that so many people left the country after the war began. After 2014, then again in 2022, there was a massive migration out of the country, millions and millions and millions of people. Internally, there's domestic, internally displaced persons. And I don't remember the numbers. I want to say, oh yeah, thank you. No,
Yeah.
exactly. No, I want to say, I don't remember the number. I want to say domestically, it's like, what, 4.5 million,
I think it's
6.7
about
million?
4 or 5 million, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's around there. People have left the country, it's 6, 7 million. So yeah, it's got all these problems. But in the long term, I think this war showed us something very interesting, which is that if Ukraine, long term, let's imagine for the next 20 years, if Ukraine were to invest seriously in its military defense, we've seen that a much smaller Ukraine, I mean, all of free Ukraine today, if we take out these people who have left the country, the people that live under occupation, there might only be about 25 million people in Ukraine. And if you consider of that 25 million, and we don't know, this is just an estimate, but it would seem to be reasonable to believe it's about 25 million. Russia's more or less 140 million. How's Ukraine been able to keep them at bay? I mean, this is 3.75 years into the 3-day special military operation. And the greatest excitement that the Kremlin has had in months is that we are close to encircling Pokrovsk. When you're saying we're close to encircling a village in eastern Ukraine that nobody knew existed before this war, I can't really say it's a great military success. I think that's pretty indicative of the fact that you're not doing well. And why are they doing that? It's because they have nothing else to brag about. I mean, they have to have something. I mean, how much do we talk about all these other towns? And it's not good to lose these cities. I'm not arguing that, of course, by any means. But my point is simply that this is not indicative of a military victory. But why has Ukraine been able to keep the Russians at bay? The fundamental question. And I think there's several different reasons, but the primary reason is the fact that Ukraine has greater technological advantage. And in history, we've seen that repeat again and again. I mean, why is it that the colonizers showed up with rifles versus the indigenous populations that did not have them? Who won? Well, the ones with the rifles. We look in history, the guy who had the cannon versus those that didn't have the cannon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We saw that there's evolution, but the one that has a greater technology is typically the one that works out best. And we saw that in World War I and World War II as well. But let's go a step further. Today, if Ukraine invests in that, even though it has a much smaller population and it's being assisted by the West, which is appreciated, but let's just imagine they bought the weapons in the future, right? Or they're developing the weapons in the future. And if they have that and Russia doesn't, I think they'll still be able to defend themselves because we see that's what's occurring right now in this historic moment.
Yeah, of course, the technological element is what's different here, and why Ukraine is disproportionately able to do so much despite, well, very little still. But I think what I mean by the fertility rate is just historically, Russia had about what 1.7 women per children per woman versus Ukraine's, which was 1.34, and that was before the war.